You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. My name is Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or streaming on the web, WMCLive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of all our previous shows. And we want to hear from you. Tweet us at hashtag WMCLive or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Today's program is really jazzy, literally. We celebrate women jazz instrumentalists and composers, 4 in particular. On baritone sax, Lauren Sevian. On alto sax, Sarah Manning. Bassist, Linda O. And drummer, Cindy Blackman Santana, with samples of their music. I told you it was cool. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. When Christopher Marlowe wrote Tamburlaine the Great, the first major Elizabethan drama, and a play that inspired and influenced the young Shakespeare, he might as well have been writing about the Boston bomber brothers, Tamburlaine, and Yokar Tsarnaev. These brothers and their violent, dysfunctional family and their mountain warrior Caucasian culture that emphasizes pride, honor, and shame are Marlovian in excess. We're learning more every day. We know that Tamerlane was described by his for-a-while wife, Catherine Russell, as angry, manipulative, and controlling. So she told her girlfriends and former roommates. He had called her a slut and a prostitute when he was angry at her, and he was known to throw furniture or other objects at her during fits of rage. She wasn't the only one he abused. In 2009, when he was an aspiring Olympic boxer, he was busted for slapping around a different girlfriend, Nadine Askew-Sall. Canaries, mine, get it? The father, a boxer himself, is quite a piece of work. He answered, he was quoted in the New York Times as answering a question about the arrest for battery, as shrugging, he hit her lightly. He wanted a manly son like himself. He has been in total denial that his sons could be associated with the bombing. Meanwhile, his brother, an uncle, has been fuming that they are associated and that it has brought shame on the family and on the entire ethnicity. And the mother, arrested for shoplifting over $1,500 worth of clothing in Boston in 2011 while wearing the strict hijab, is a classic contradiction. One of the many things about women in Muslim societies that is not understood in the West, even by some feminists, is the attraction to Islamism or extremist Islam. Forms of extreme Islam can be perceived as forms of empowerment, yes, for women. This may seem strange when we think of the Taliban shooting people for learning how to read or Saudi Arabia, but it's true. It takes place over the battle for sons, a battle between mothers and fathers, you could say, in lots of other places too. But imagine if your husband is as patriarchal as they get, but you long for having some agency over your own life and your children's lives, because after age 7 they belong to him. Imagine that he molds his sons in his own image, in this case, boxing, drinking, violence, admittedly being proud about acting, quote, crazy. She, on the other hand, the mother, called her son my Tamerlane, and she cried for days when he announced he didn't want to live at home. So she took comfort in religion. No one can say her nay about that, and she was hardly the first wretchedly unhappy woman to do so. And she promulgated it to her son. And lo and behold, her Tamerlane stopped drinking and drugging and whoring, and they bonded. They bonded in Islam. He even stopped boxing, which meant all hell broke loose between Mom and Dad, because Dad wanted him to be a champ. The mother and father actually separated over this fight about possession of the sons' souls. The daughters were already in arranged marriages, miserable in their own right. One was already divorced. Her husband had returned, taking their child with him to Russia. But he sent the child back because he was so afraid of the father, Ansar's, threats and violence and craziness. But meanwhile, these now obsessively religious sons are still stretched on the rack of manhood identity. So their religiosity, originally a bonding with the mother against the father, now begins to evince itself with the same toxic violence that previously informed their secular lives, but this time with even greater fanaticism, because now, of course, God is on their side. Still, Tamerlan phoned his mother, she claims, while on the run in his last hours, telling her that he loved her. Muhammad Atta, the leader of the 9/11 hijackers, had a brutalizing father who called him a sissy boy, really a daughter, and a mama's pet, until the son's revolt became so acute that he would not touch a woman. Zacharias Moussaoui, another 9/11 collaborator, found his zealous religion on his own. He admitted liking the male privileges that came with it, that women had to obey him and he didn't have to help his mother around the house, and his first target was his mother, demanding that she wear the hijab. This was in France, where she fled from his abusive, violent, guess what, father. The Montreal massacre was committed by the son of a battering father. I could go on. Tamerlan reportedly demanded that the women in his life wear the hijab, too. Meanwhile, back in Boston, Catherine Russell grows up yearning for adventure and exotic foreign experience. She wants to join the Peace Corps. She's drawn to dark, brooding men. She meets dark, brooding Tamerlan. She falls in love, drops out of school, converts, marries him, and bears him, thank God, a daughter, Zahara, now a toddler. And then Catherine works 7 days a week as a home health care aide, a really hard job, while he supposedly cares for the child. Except, we learn that her friends and relatives actually did more of that. He, in other words, loafed, while she supported them. We're going to learn more in the weeks and months to come, and I'll return to this subject, these demon lovers, again. Return to talking about the younger brother, Yokar, who has the face of a pre-Raphaelite angel, and the sisters and the uncles and the aunts and the cousins, all seemingly so eager to have their 15 minutes of fame while dissociating themselves from this act of not what they denounce as violence or murder or maiming or cruelty or stupidity, but shame. Pride, honor, a shame culture, manhood. At least Marlowe's Tamerlan was, like his creator, an atheist, but no less fanatic. That Tamerlan shocked Elizabethan audiences. He burned the Koran on stage. And now to our first guest. Lauren Sevian is a Grammy-winning saxophonist who has played professionally since she was age 12. She's had a stellar career both educating and performing at the Monterey Jazz Festival's Next Generation Festival, among her many distinguished and sparkly gigs. And she's still young, with years of music ahead. Welcome, Lauren, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin.
Well, you are the first Grammy winner that we've had on the program, and I am very impressed. I'm also doubly impressed because you won it for the Mingus Big Band's Live at the Jazz Standard in 2011. Am I right?
Yes, we recorded that. I want to say it was at the end of 2008, if I'm not mistaken. The Mingus Band for several years has been nominated, and all of the records are so incredible cast of musicians, and I just happen to be the lucky one that was on that particular recording that won, so it's such an honor and a privilege to be recognized in that way, along with all the other musicians.
You also performed his Epitaph, didn't you, with the Mingus Epitaph Orchestra?
Yes, that was I believe that was back in 2007. It had been performed also in the 90s. And that configuration there were two baritones, so it was great fun. I got to play a long time Ronnie Huber.
You've been not only in this remarkable ensemble work that in a sense personifies jazz, but you've been at it as an individual for quite a while. You've been performing professionally since you were 12, first on the piano and then on the sax. I don't know whether you were already on baritone sax at that point, but at the age of 16, you won the Count Basie invitational soloing competition, and then that led to a feature performance with the Basie band. And by the age of 17, you already had performed at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, and the Village Vanguard. You were a busy child.
Yeah, again, I feel like it was down to good fortune, and I had such a great high school band instructor, this guy Craig Von Bargen, and he always made sure we had all the opportunities for those kinds of performances. So when I performed at Lincoln Center and the Vanguard and Carnegie Hall, that was all with the Grammy. There was the Tri-State Grammy ensembles, which is like one of the regional ensembles for the All-American Grammy ensembles, which they still run. And being in those bands at high school, that really opened a lot of doors for me, and that was how I wound up going to Manhattan School of Music. And my musical my career took a bit of a different turn. I was sort of planning on being I was going into music education. I was thinking about doing that, which I still, am involved in, but I'm more involved in music on the performance level because that's my field of expertise, having gone to conservatory instead of.
Well, and our ears are luckier for it. I see though that you suffer from the chronic women's disease of terminal modesty, because you sure as hell it's all luck and a good teacher, but you must have had the chops really pretty damn early to be accomplishing this much. And on baritone sax,
I definitely worked pretty hard and practiced, and I had the mentality of being a perpetual student and always being open to learn, experience new things, not just in music, but in life, So I feel like that kind of attitude, really helps, helps me in this
of course.
Industry,
Has the difficulty been increased by being a woman, particularly an instrumentalist? I mean, women most notably have made inroads into jazz as vocalists, but instrumentalists, particularly with the baritone sax, there aren't many of you.
No, I mean there aren't, and I guess I always try to not focus so much on the struggle or the plight of it, but just to find ways just to make sure that, I was the best that I could possibly be. Mm-hmm. I want to show up and play and make sure that, okay, like this girl can really play, instead of like, oh, we're going to take it easy on her because she's a girl, or because that, that kind of situation, does happen. But I always wanted to make sure that I could back it up, so to speak.
Take the top of their head off. We'll take the top of ours off now. We're going to play only, unfortunately, a fragment, about a minute's worth of your work. What are we about to hear? We're
about to hear Blueprint, which is the title track of my debut record on Inner Circle Music. It's a saxophonist Greg Osby's label, and it's the name of it is Blueprint, title track.
you must be still fairly young, having been at it for decades and decades.
I'm 33 years old. So,
oh my God! And this accomplished.
So many different gigs, not just jazz gigs, but gigs with people like Dennis Leary, and working with artists through the Black Rock Coalition, which was this organization that was started by Vernon Reid of Living Color. So, and I worked with a lot of women in that organization. A lot of rock musicians and pop musicians, and so it's really rewarding to have a very diverse career.
The outreach to rock and even to pop is amazing, because that I come from a generation where that was not done, and right. Jazz was very much off to itself, partly snobbery, but also partly being avant-garde, whatever the reasons. But there was not a cross-fertilization, so it's lovely that you're doing that. And it's lovely that you were here with us on Women's Media Center Live. I wish we had more time, but at least we got to hear a snippet of the music. And is there a record coming out that we should look for? Something new?
Well, hopefully, I want to say hopefully within the next year or so, I'm going to record. I've been ready for a while. It's just, it's hard because, it takes time and money and energy. And I have the material basically all ready to go. I just have to figure out, when I'm going to do it, but it's hopefully just keep your eyes peeled. You never know, in the next couple of years you'd be expecting.
We will keep our eyes and our ears peeled both. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
And we have to take a break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. When we come back, we'll hear the work of and meet a jazz composer and alto saxophonist who was, you're not going to believe it, a women's studies major at Smith. So don't go away. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back. Sarah Manning has produced a number of albums as a composer and band leader, and she's performed at top jazz venues. Her albums include House on Eddy Street, that's 2004, and Yoshi's, live at Yoshi's, Two Rooms, Same Door in 2006, her own compositions. Dandelion Clock, which was released in May of 2010, was the first choice for Best Albums of that year by critic Carlo Wolf. She led her quartet at the Tanglewood Jazz Festival in 2011, and in October of 2012, she was a fellow, SIC, S-I-C, fellow in composition at the MacDowell Colony. Welcome, Sarah, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you're my dream of a guest for a Women in Jazz show, because you were a women's studies major, and in our brief talk ahead of time, you mentioned that being a women's studies major informed the way that you are in the world of jazz as a jazz composer who's a woman. Talk to us about that.
Well, I think that, I had a choice of being in a single-sex education environment at William Patterson College when I was a jazz major, and I was one. There was about 7 women in a program of 65 students, and they were mostly singers. There were only a few instrumentalists, like myself, and no saxophonists. So I decided I might as well go to Smith, women's college, and I think that reading about just discovering how much of history where women were not mentioned in the courses that I had taken in other schools and universities and things. I think it's really important to then think about the history of women in the music of jazz.
Why is that, Sarah? I love jazz, but I can't claim at all to be an aficionado. But I mean, clearly we can all name the great women singers in jazz, from Billie Holiday through Dinah Washington and Sarah Vaughan and the great Ella. But when I try to think just as a layperson about the women instrumentalists and composers, I come up with Mary Lou Williams, and I come up with Marion McPartland, who's always an anomaly because she was white and British. Why have we been restricted to the vocalist area?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that from the beginning, it was always considered more, I guess, ladylike, if you will, for women to be vocalists rather than, instrumentalists playing things like saxophones and trumpets was maybe considered more aggressive at a certain time. But really, since the very beginning of jazz, there have been very influential women. Lil Hardin, for example, a pianist and composer who played in Louis Armstrong's Hot Five, and she actually wrote his what people think of as his composition, Starting with Some Barbecue, which is one of the classics of that period, and that was in the 20s. So there have been people throughout history. In fact, there was a time in World War II where women took over the big bands as well as taking over factories and things like that.
Really?
Yes. So there were actually, at one time, there were I think at least 100 big bands in the U.S. that had women members.
Wow, that whole part of music history has been effectively buried, hasn't it? I mean, that has not made it into the popular imagination, at least.
Well, that's true. And in fact, I had a very profound experience in college when I was studying in a jazz course in history, and I kind of mentioned that along with another female instrumentalist who was in the class, and the professor said, well, if women were if they were actually in history and making a contribution, they would be in the history books. And I thought that really missed the mark, as unfortunately, as unfortunate as that is.
He never heard the rubric, which happens to be true, that the folks who have power are the ones who get to write the history books?
Apparently not.
I guess not. Let's talk a little bit about you. When did you realize you wanted to be a jazz musician?
I started playing saxophone in the 8th grade. I was inspired by Paul Winter, who is a saxophonist, not so much in the jazz genre, although he did some Brazilian music. But he was in my area, and I interviewed him for National History Day. And then my father was quite a collector of jazz music, huge fan, and so he started playing me jazz records when I had started the saxophone. And it didn't take me long to move from Stan Getz to John Coltrane and to start transcribing solos, and just for whatever reason, it felt like the right way to express myself.
Wow. And your instrument is alto sax?
Yes, that's correct. I am unusual in that I don't play any other saxophones, just the alto.
Well, let's take a brief pause here and listen to some of it. Tell us what we're about to hear.
Sure. We're going to hear a section of a tune that I wrote called The Owls Are on the March. It is a improvised section with the chord changes are written, and it's off of the melody. But this section that you'll hear is improvised with myself on alto saxophone, Art Hirahara on piano, Linda O on the bass, and Kyle Strug on drums. And this is from a 2010 recording on Positone Records entitled Dandelion Clock. Really cool in more ways than one, Sarah. Thank you.
Tell me, this one was improvised. But when you compose, do you compose written music?
I compose in a couple of different ways. In fact, I really got into the composition process this last October. There was a fellow in composition at the McDowell Colony, and so I had a piano and a rocking chair and a saxophone, and I learned that composition could involve sitting at the piano. It could involve, playing the saxophone or looking out the window at the owls in the forest or sitting in the rocking chair drinking a cup of tea.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, those are the three basics when you think about it that you need. You don't need much beyond that.
Correct.
Tell me also, do women compose or play differently than men?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think the only way that I would say that it's the case is that jazz is it's an art form that deals with improvisation, and at its best, improvisation is a reflection of, essentially your soul and what you're feeling in the moment. And so, women's experiences in life are different in many ways, and so I'm sure that what they're saying is informed by, being a woman among other things in their life. But I don't think that there really is any difference between male and female players in any other sense. And that's one of the problems in jazz today is that, the perception can be that women are not as aggressive or that they're more lyrical as players. And some women are lyrical and some are more aggressive. And I think that the main thing is that, we're not quite seen as we're still seen as the other in jazz. And there's women in jazz festivals and women in jazz lists, and really it's time for, this has been going on for the last 20 odd years. It's time for women to just be a part of the regular performance schedule.
Yeah, how do we change that? I mean, there are women in jazz festivals, a couple of them now, but the major jazz festivals still are mostly the guys.
Yeah, I think that one way to change things is to kind of put pressure on organizations in music to do a little bit better in terms of getting women involved in their ranks. The other thing is to help shift the demographic of jazz. The majority demographic of jazz is men of a certain age and a certain income level. The Jazz Times magazine, for example, primary readers are white males from the age of, I think, 50 and up, incomes of $100,000 a year or something like that. So, and that's just one publication. But I think that women's magazines and publications like Bitch and Bust, and it'd be nice for them to kind of look at women instrumentalists and women playing in genres that are considered, male. More male-oriented as opposed to singer-songwriters. That's something that can be done because I think that we're overlooked in that regard. Yeah,
well, I'm glad we're doing this program then. And I know that Ms. has covered women jazz instrumentalists in the past, but it's something that they should return to. You're terrific, and thank you so much for being with us and for being a feminist female jazz composer and instrumentalist who sounds awful good and who gives me personally just real delight. Will you come back again and play for us again?
Sure, I'd love to.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Verbal Karate. Now, if you find yourself in Sweden and you want to speak Swedish and you do not want to have a gendered way of doing that, for example, the pronoun he, which is han in Swedish, or she, which is hun, that's affectionate, there is now a proposed gender-neutral personal pronoun. Actually, it's not proposed any longer. It started in 1994. The word is hen, H-E-N, a new personal pronoun applied to objects and people who don't wish to specifically identify as male or female. But the big news is that it is now official. It has made it into the Swedish National Encyclopedia. So, I mean, this isn't one for the category, oh, you Swedes. And the additional item in Verbal Karate is a new one that I'm making up, which I'm calling binge wording. Binge wording is sort of like binge eating, but it doesn't make you fat. Binge wording is when everybody seems to mix all my metaphors, jump on board of a phrase or a word, and it gets wildly used all the time, and then it gets dropped. For example, kick the can down the road. That was very popular a few weeks back. Before that, it was double down. And reach out, or reaching out, or I reached out to them, still seems to have a half-life that's continuing. So, I mean, these are sometimes empty phrases that mean absolutely nothing, but serve a trendy moment. And all I want to do is warn you that while you're kicking the can down the road and doubling down to do it while reaching out, be careful you don't get too contorted. Keep an eye out for binge wording and binge words and send them to us at Women's Media Center Live at gmail.com or tweet it to us at hashtag WMC Live. Break time again. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I just checked, and I'm still Robin Morgan. Next up, a Chinese musician who was born in Malaysia, raised in Australia, and is now a jazz artist in the USA. When we come back.
When it comes to talk radio, men still do most of the talking. It doesn't get too much better if you look at television, newspapers, film, video games, social media, literature, sports, and corporate or technology leadership. The Women's Media Center's Status of Women in the U.S. Media 2013 report details the persistent gender disparity in a range of media institutions that rank among the greatest influencers in American society. To read the full report, go to womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And welcome back. Linda O, that's O-H, Linda O attended the Western Australia Academy of Performing Arts and then completed her master's at the Manhattan School of Music. She's the recipient of the ASCAP Young Jazz Composers Award of 2008 and the 2010 Bell Award for the Young Australian Jazz Artist of the Year. Her recording, Entry, came out in 2009, and she was featured on Sarah Manning's album, Dandelion Clock. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live, Linda.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. Thanks for having me.
You started to play piano at age 4, and then you took up the clarinet at 11, and the bassoon, that's a little unusual, at age 13. But then you discovered the bass guitar, and you fell in love with music. And, of course, now you're a bassist. How did you what was it particularly about the bass that got you?
I think there were lots of things. During high school, I played a lot of classical music, and an uncle of mine actually gave me a bass guitar, like just a really cheap, basic bass guitar just to play on at home. And I had friends, and we formed a rock band, and my sister would listen to all kinds of music as well, including Red Hot Chili Peppers, Led Zeppelin, lots of different rock bands. And initially it was kind of more through rock that I got into bass guitar. But then as things progressed, I actually moved towards some fusion jazz music and then into jazz at the end of it. And that's when I decided to take up upright bass.
There's a lovely thing in the trajectory of your work, which is that it is sort of music inclusive. I now realize it's partly because you were trained classically, but there is also this outreach to rock and to pop and to music being just music. And is there a name for that in jazz? Forgive my ignorance, but is that fusion, or is that something else?
It can be. I mean, it depends. I mean, sometimes fusion implies more of a traditional jazz fused with rock, you know, kind of reminiscent of the 70s, of that period of Miles Davis where he had his electric band with, you know, bass guitars, electric guitars, and Rhodes, and that sort of thing. But I mean, it's still fusion, I guess, in the sense of fusing different elements of classical music or rock music or you know, just multi-genres, you know, in the one context, you know. I think I mean, that's kind of a place where I'm coming from. I mean, I do know the importance of learning the tradition, and that's something I'm constantly always studying,
But at the end of the day, there are lots of influences that influence me, and same goes for a lot of my peers as well.
As a woman bassist, there are not a whole lot of you. I mean, most notably, there's Michelle and again a cello, of course, and a number of others, but not a critical mass. Have you experienced sexism or racism or problems being who you are and the excellence of what you do in jazz, or has it been a welcoming family?
You know, I think it depends. I mean, I feel like everyone in some stage experiences some sort of a discrimination in some way or form. You know, it's kind of unavoidable, no matter what race you are, no matter what instrument you play, no matter what sex you are. You know, it depends. And I like to put myself in lots of different positions, you know, and explore different types of jazz and different settings. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you know, as an Asian female who's not American, you know, I did encounter some discrimination and some stereotyping, but you know, at the end of the day, the people who I play with, it's not really an issue for them, and if anything, it kind of adds a different dimension to have something that's a little bit different, you know. And I mean, when people ask me about the question about women in jazz and being Asian in jazz, you know, I kind of think that a lot of people have gone through similar things. You know, a lot of European musicians experience some sort of stereotype for the way they play.
Right.
You know, and just because you're American, you know, some people associate that with a specific type of jazz. You know, it's everywhere, and if someone's a experienced listener or an experienced musician, like, they tend to look beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, and clearly, if you have the goods and you really play superbly, and of course you're a composer as well, then there's sooner or later they're going to have to see through all the stereotypes and shut the hell up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I want to give our listeners a sampling of your work, which is a particularly moving piece. It's a song that you dedicated to your mother and your grandmothers, saying that the lyrics refer to small things to do with their lives, and it's called Thicker Than Water, and you wrote the lyrics as well as the music, and they're in Mandarin and English?
Yeah, I co-wrote the Mandarin lyrics with a good friend of mine who's from Beijing, and she helped me kind of form the tune, but it was something that I wanted to write. I learned Mandarin as a young child. We spoke a Southern Chinese dialect at home called Hokkien, and so Mandarin is something that I'm still constantly studying, you know, trying to get better and better, and this is kind of one of my challenges, but also kind of a tribute to my grandmothers and my mother. I come from a family of very strong, intelligent women who have really inspired me, and yeah, that was kind of my tribute to them.
风和美歌真娇，你离你的终点只有7步之遥，握紧方向盘，满足你的心灵，对你的实力不要有任何遮掩。Don't cry, little sister. Dance away your troubles. You'll come to understand these thoughts and lonely aspirations.
Ah, thank you. I also want to mention a work that you're you're still working on now. It's a jazz quartet with string quartet. I think this is just so cool. called Concert in the Dark. Tell us about it.
Well, I have a jazz quartet, piano bass drums and saxophone, in conjunction with a string quartet called the Serious String Quartet. And initially I started writing some music for that setting, and one of my plans was to somehow give a performance where the audience was basically sitting in the middle of the room, and the mobile components of the band, i.e. the violins and the viola and the saxophone, could actually walk around the audience and be in set positions. And so the audience would experience a sort of surround sound concert, a concert that someone had to actually go and see and participate in, as opposed to just, see live streaming on the web or see a clip on YouTube, that sort of thing. And we did one concert a couple of years ago, and I'm still working on the concept right now. At the moment, I did a residency at this great place called the Jazz Gallery, and they had a residency that allowed me to workshop some of this music, which we did record live. We didn't logistically have the whole surround sound thing planned out because it was a bit too difficult for that particular concert. But so that recording is going to be released as a live album, and eventually we're going to transition to make this surround sound thing happen. And I've been speaking to some sound installation artists to see if we can really make that happen and see if we can even record it in some sort of surround sound setting.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll keep a watch out for Concert in the Dark. And thank you so much, Linda, for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. I wish we had more time, but at least we got a sampling of your work, and we can follow that up and find more.
No worries. Thank you so much.
And it's time for another pause. I'm Robin Morgan, here with Women's Media Center Live. Coming up, a woman who shatters music stereotypes. The celebrated American jazz and rock drummer, Cindy Blackman Santana.
Parkinson's disease affects as many as 1 million people in the United States. This April, during Parkinson's Awareness Month, the Parkinson's Disease Foundation focuses on the millions of women who live with Parkinson's or who care for a partner with Parkinson's. Learn how to make a difference and help improve research, care, and support for these women by visiting www.pdf.org or calling 800-457-6676.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back again, this time with a woman who's worked with such great female jazz legends as Cassandra Wilson and Jackie McLean, who toured with Lenny Kravitz and with Carlos Santana and then married him, who records extensively and who conducts drum clinics in Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Cindy Blackman Santana. Welcome, Cindy, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me.
You are a very distinguished jazz and rock drummer. Is that unusual to cross genres that way? Didn't jazz used to be, very much of itself and to itself? Or are you an anomaly?
The music still is of itself and to itself to an extent, because it takes a special skill set to really grasp all of the components that go into playing that music in terms of each individual instrument. But there's been a lot of merging, I'd say, from 1969, when Tony Williams created his band called Lifetime, which was a mixture of jazz and rock. So he really started that movement, And since then, there's been a lot of merging. So there's a lot of music that's played that has jazz sensibilities. For example, I have two bands, one acoustic and one jazz rock group. And the jazz rock group is just that as well. It plays, rock-style things and jazz things, but the overall sensibility of the music is a jazz sensibility in terms of the way that we communicate musically, in terms of the structure of the songs, in terms of the use of harmonies. It's got the rock elements in that respect as well. A lot of musicians did not intertwine and mix. There are more and more who are doing that and doing it successfully. But I would say that the ones who do it, and you can't tell which side of the fence they're on when they're doing each individual style. Which means that they're doing it very, very well. That number gets to be a bit less, but there are still some other musicians and groups that are doing that quite well. And the merging is beautiful.
You seem uniquely fitted for this cross fertilization because you're the daughter of and granddaughter of classical musicians, right? Your mother and your grandmother?
Absolutely. My mother, she played classical violin, and she no longer plays, but she was a classical violinist and quite good, I hear. And my grandmother was a great classical pianist. So, there's always been elements of many different styles and genres of music in our home. My dad loved jazz, so he had a lot of Ahmad Jamal records and Miles records. My older sister, who's 6 years my senior, she had, at the age of about, 16, she had at least 200 records.
Wow.
And they spanned just the gamut of musicality, from Miles Davis and John Coltrane to Bird to other styles like Chaka Khan and Rufus, James Brown, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix. She had a collection of so much stuff. So we've always had, many genres of music and styles in our home.
I would love to know what brought you to drums particularly, because there's a wonderful quote of yours that I came across. In the past, it says, there were a lot of stigmas attached to women playing certain instruments, which is, as an aside, certainly true. You say, I think a lot of women stick to particular instruments like, say, piano, that seem acceptable. So that lessens the playing field in terms of how many women drummers are out there. And let's face it, boys' clubs do still exist. But I don't care about that. I'm going to do what I'm going to do musically anyway. It's a great quote. What brought you to drums, particularly in this wonderful soup of music that you grew up in?
Well, fortunately for me, and as you can tell by that quote, I don't look at music as having distinctions of genre.
Exactly.
I don't look at music as having distinctions of race. Even in terms of what we were talking about previously about the styles, I call it creative music, so I just look at the quality, the outpouring of the music, the spiritual giving from each individual of the music and for the music. But fortunately for me, as a young girl, I didn't have any idea what society deemed as normal, natural, and acceptable.
Isn't that great?
So I was very young, and as well, I was very fortunate because I never heard any distinctions of that nature in my home.
Of course.
None of my family members or my parents, when I expressed to them that I wanted to be a drummer and to have drums, my parents said, well, they're too loud and they're too expensive. We don't want to hear them and we can't afford them. So that was what I got. After a year of begging, I did get my drums. But, and then they could sense and knew that I was serious about wanting to pursue this. I looked on my dad's records, and I saw the Modern Jazz Quartet, and the drummer was Connie Kay. Mm-hmm. And I assumed, because I had a cousin who was a girl, whose name was Connie, I just figured that was a girl. And you know what? It didn't seem out of the way to me or abnormal. It just seemed like, oh, this drummer's name is Connie Kay.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, I love it.
When I did my first professional gig at the age of 13, and I was out in the public, that's when I started hearing things. But up to that point, I'd never even heard anything that suggested that I shouldn't do it because I was a girl.
And by that time, your confidence was already beginning to be set. I mean, by that time, you knew that you were a person, a human being, and a drummer, by God, a drummer.
I knew that. It didn't mean that, when I heard things that were of the nastier variety, that it didn't affect me.
Sure.
I'm not made of stone.
No, of
because
course.
It did hurt my feelings. However, my love for drumming and my love for music was so strong that when I would go back home, go down in my basement and play my drums again, I forgot all about it.
Nothing
and I realized that those comments didn't have anything to do with me, nor did they matter.
Right. We're going to hear, what are we hearing? We're hearing, this is an excerpt from your piece, The Three Van Goghs.
Three Van Goghs from a record that we recorded called Works on Canvas.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. That is very special. There's a distinguished and lengthy discography of Cindy Blackman Santana, so I'm not going to list it here. But I do want to call attention to people who are in or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on May 18th. For the gig Cindy Blackman Santana's Explorations at the Kennedy Center's Terrace Theater, the Mary Lou Williams Jazz Festival, another great jazz genius. And you can find out more about that on the Kennedy Center website, which is just kennedy-center.org. The gig is on May 18th. I wish I were there. I wish I could get to hear you play live, but I'm very grateful to you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live today.
It is my pleasure, and I'm very grateful for you all thinking of me and inviting me. Thank you.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. I don't know what's wrong with Politico. Politico, as you may know, is the online sort of high-end gossip site about politics and media. And Politico seems to have it in for Jill Abramson, who is the first woman executive editor of the New York Times. In her first year at the top of the masthead, she got rid of dead wood. She steered the almost 200-year-old publication, which was tottering like a fabulous invalid, through a still ongoing digital transformation. She shuffled senior editorial staff. The digital transformation is fabulous. Now behind a paywall, the Times has recruited more than 500,000 paid subscribers, and it attracts over 40 million unique visitors worldwide each month. And just recently, oh yes, it garnered yet 4 more Pulitzer Prizes. So she hasn't done so bad. In fact, nobody, including Politico, is criticizing her record as a journalist. It's just that they don't like her. Who do they like? They like the managing editor, a guy named Dean Baquet. He's won the loyalty of the staff and of Politico. Nobody says anything negative against him. He's a sweetie, except he tends to put his fists through walls when he's upset and slam desks and leave the office for the entire day, which he did recently after a disagreement with his editor-in-chief, his executive editor, Abramson. What they say about Abramson, according to Politico, is that she's stubborn, she's condescending at times, she's brusque. Excuse me, tell it to Lou Grant. What about the image of the brusque, stubborn, condescending newspaper man? She can be impossible, they say, and also, quote, she's just not naturally charismatic, not likable. Remember, You're Likable Enough, Hillary, which almost completely ended Barack Obama's career? She's bitchy, they say. This is unbelievable in 2013. They say that she's been absent without leave at times, like, for example, she was not present at a farewell party for a senior staff member or two. What was she doing? Oh, excuse me, she was seeking accreditation for the newspaper in Cuba. It's amazing this is going on, and particularly in terms of personal characterization. When former executive editor Howell Raines got in hot water for insisting on keeping a known plagiarist on staff and for other scandals, nobody characterized him. They spoke of his policies being bad. They spoke in the passive construction, quote, mistakes were made, but nobody attacked his character. Here, on the other hand, pull out all the stops. Gail Collins, prize-winning columnist for the New York Times, who was recently on this program, spoke with great pride about Abramson, her chops as an editor, her promoting women, her commitment to women, and her being a first-rate first woman at the head of the masthead. And Anna Quindlen, another former columnist of the New York Times, who is shortly to be a guest on this show, said much the same thing in conversations with me. Now, who do you think I'm going to believe? Anonymous staffers, anonymously quoted, or those two women? Oh, please. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of our previous shows. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Bruns, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week when Shazia Rafi will report on how women are surviving Pakistan's political spasms. Kathleen Hanna will tell Riot Girls' secrets, and a two-segment conversation with Anna Quindlen will range over politics, journalism, generations, and the joys and hilarities of feminist friendship. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.